Makes no difference now what kind of life fate hands me. I'll get along without you now, that's plain to see. I don't care what happens next, but I'll get by somehow. And I don't worry, 'cause it makes no difference now. Now that we have really parted, I can't believe we're through. And I don't blame myself, and I'm sure I can't blame you. I know something.
No dia 12 de janeiro de 2019, a Motown Records completou 60 anos de existência. Fundada em 1959, em Detroit, Estados Unidos, e nomeada inicialmente como Tamla Records, a gravadora trouxe consigo um estilo ímpar de produção, além da inserção do povo negro em lugares onde os mesmos não imaginariam ocupar, como programas de televisão e até mesmo concertos em renomados espaços, como Copacabana, Montreal, Hollywood Palace e Coconut Grove.
Com a quarta maior população de afro-americanos nos Estados Unidos, geralmente compostas por imigrantes que fugiam do sistema racista e opressor que assolava o país, a cidade de Detroit era conhecida como Motortown, cidade motor em português, devido ao grande número de montadoras de automóveis ali instaladas. E era nela que residiam 3 garotas que mal sabiam que formariam o maior grupo vocal negro da história. Diana Ross, que posteriormente seria conhecida como Diana Ross, Mary Wilson e Florence Ballard, foram criadas nos conjuntos habitacionais de Detroit. As garotas inicialmente não se conheciam. Mary e Florence se conheceram durante um show de talentos. Depois disso, elas conheceriam Diana e Betty McGlown, que viriam a ser as suas colegas de grupo.
Mary, em seu livro Dream Girl, My Life is a Supreme, diz que Florence era uma garota bonita, com pele clara, cabelos ruivos, corpo curvilíneo e dona de uma voz ímpar. As jovens tinham prometido convidar uma a outra, caso aparecesse um convite para formar um grupo musical.
I did meet Florence first. She was the one we were in elementary school, and I think the 8th grade. And our school was having a talent contest. Well, it wasn't a contest because we didn't compete against each other, just a talent show. And so I signed up because I didn't think I wanted to be a singer, but what I wanted was just the experience of it. And Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers were the big male group at the time. And so they had a hit record out called, one record, I'm Not a Juvenile Delinquent. And the biggest hit was Why Do Fools Fall in Love? Well, I was so inspired by them. You know, it's like the Jackson 5 or New Kids on the Block, whatever. I mean, I just loved it. And so what I did was, sorry, my nose started running. So what I did was, to try, I said I would try it out. So in the school talent show, I sang I pantomimed. I didn't sing. I was pantomiming to their record. And the children in the gymnasium went wild. I was so surprised. I said, oh my God, they really liked it, right? And so then Florence Ballard also sang on the same show. She started singing, Ave Maria. And we were only like 13 or 14 years old, right? And I'm like, oh my God, her voice is so big and so beautiful. And she didn't have any music, just her voice. So I fell in love with that. And we started talking after school hours on the playground. And so she we said, let's form a group because everybody's doing that. This was like 1959, 58 or 59. And so we became friends. We walked home, became friends. And the next day, someone asked her about another girl. And so one of the guys in this other group named the Primes said, well, what about Diane? She lives across the street from Mary. And that's how we got Diane. So that was just in a matter of days. I always say we met at the same time, but people make it seem like, well, I knew Florence first. But we kind of met at the same time. We started singing, rehearsing with the guys who wanted us to prime.
O quarteto chamado The Primettes se formou em 1959 sob a administração do empresário musical Milton Jenkins. O nome Primettes era originado do grupo musical The Primes, que futuramente se tornariam os renomados Temptations. A banda cantava em clubes da cidade e, por conta da idade, as meninas às vezes eram proibidas de cantar nos locais. Florence era a mais velha do grupo, com alguns meses de diferença.
But then we had 4 girls because they knew this other girl, Betty. And we didn't know her. She didn't live in the projects where we lived. So we had to sort of go back and forth to rehearse. And that's how we came together. And it was through another management called Richard Morris, who took us to this record company. And so we recorded with them.
Com o passar dos tempos, as Primettes se tornaram conhecidas aos arredores da cidade. O grupo, em 1960, assinou com a gravadora Lupine Records, onde lançaram os singles Tears of Sorrow e Pretty Baby, uma música liderada por Mary Wilson, que abria espaço para escutar a poderosa voz de Florence Ballard.
No mesmo ano, um evento turbulento mudaria a vida de uma delas. Florence Ballard foi para um evento em sua cidade, no Greystone Ballroom, acompanhada de seu irmão Billy. Devido à quantidade de pessoas frequentando o local, os jovens acabaram se perdendo de vista. Florence, então, decidiu retornar à sua casa, quando um jovem lhe ofereceu carona. Esse jovem era o jogador de basquete Reggie Harding, que em vez de levar a cantora para casa, a levou para um estacionamento, onde a abusou sexualmente. O acontecido deixou a cantora em profundo trauma, fazendo com que Ballard se isolasse do restante de suas amigas e escondesse o acontecido.
Apesar do acontecido, as garotas continuaram trabalhando e lutando para que seus sonhos se tornassem realidade. No mesmo ano, Betty McGlown deixou o grupo, sendo substituída pela cantora Barbara Martin.
So anyway, Betty McGlown got married. She was a little older than the others we were. So she got married. And since we were used to having 4 members, and the harmony was great with 4. So we had to find someone new. It was actually one of the Temptations who suggested Barbara Martin because he had known her when she was singing with her brother's group. And so we said, okay, we'll check her out. And we saw her, first of all, we loved her. She's a beautiful girl. And then, she fit right in with the harmonies. And so that was how we chose her. Yeah.
As jovens assinaram com a gravadora após o vice-presidente Smokey Robinson aceitar o pedido de Diana para que as meninas pudessem fazer uma audição. Essa não foi a primeira vez que as garotas pediram. Após o fim das aulas, elas costumavam ir até a recém-fundada gravadora, onde imploravam para que, de certa forma, pudessem fazer parte dela. E isso vai desde bater palmas e fazer vocais de fundo, até ter o contrato assinado.
O primeiro álbum das The Supremes, produzido pela Motown, foi intitulado Meet the Supremes, lançado em novembro de 1962. No mesmo ano, Barbara Martin descobriu sua gravidez, e decidiu deixar o grupo para formar uma família. O grupo, então, seguiu como um trio. Apesar da capa do álbum apresentar somente 3 cantoras, Barbara cantou nas faixas. A mais notável é After All, onde o quarteto dividiu os vocais, cada uma com um verso. A princípio, o álbum não teve impacto nas paradas musicais dos Estados Unidos, fazendo com que as meninas passassem a serem conhecidas como The No Hit Supremes nos arredores da gravadora. Durante a época, alguns grupos femininos da Motown já tinham ocupado o primeiro lugar nas paradas musicais, como The Marvelettes com o single Please Mr. Postman e Martha and Vangelis com Love's Like a Heatwave.
Well, first of all, let me say I created the term. I did. Because, see, the thing about it, and here's why. At Motown, whoever had the hit record was the people who everyone loved. So I knew that we had released, 6 or 7 records, recording that were not hits. So I'm like, and I know they're laughing at us behind our back. This is where it all started. They're laughing at us behind our back because we think we're so good. In fact, we know we're good. Right? and so I'm like, they're probably saying those no hit Supremes, but they don't have a hit record and we do. So that was just my creative mind kind of doing something. And everyone picks up that statement. I don't know why, but they do. But that's where it came from. And like I said, everybody uses it.
O grupo chegaria ao number 1 em 1964 com o primeiro hit, Radio Love Go, permitindo às garotas aparições nos mais diversos lugares, entre eles Canadá, Los Angeles, Reino Unido e Amsterdã.
Well, first of all, we were over, that was in Paris, and we were over in Paris doing, I think it was a TV show. We were on a run of European TV shows. And, a PR for Where Did Our Love Go? So this one, when we finished the TV show, the producer of the show said, I got an idea. So we're like, what? And he said, I can play the music over the loudspeaker and have you singing it or pantomime to it on the Champs-Élysées, right? And we're like, okay, cool. We were game for anything at those days. Not anything, but those type things. So we started doing it. And we were running down it, and all of a sudden, all the policemen were there, and the cars were stopping, and this still is new music in Paris, France. You see, but the people started stopping and listening, and pretty soon the policemen started trying to stop us, and we were like, why are they doing this? And we never stopped singing though. We were still, and like, what is he doing? We don't know. Oh my God, are they gonna? When we had this interaction going on, it was actually hilarious then. But we were like, we didn't know. And I know about the French police because we were accustomed once again, and they are not very kind, So they were going to take us in anyway. Afterwards, we realized the producer had not gotten the rights for us to do that. So it was really on him, but we didn't know it, So, but we didn't get arrested. They just let us go on. But that was funny. In fact, I have a new YouTube channel, and I think we put it up, or we're going to put it up if I haven't already put it up there, because it is really funny. And I was wearing one of my favorite colors, suit, blue. And then I saw it on another TV show that I did. I said, that was the same suit I wore. Oh my God. Because we always try not to wear the same thing, so people want to say, she wore that, at the Academy Awards. So there you go.
Após o primeiro hit, vieram mais 2 no mesmo ano, Baby Love e Come See About Me, que permitiu ao grupo uma performance emblemática no dia 27 de dezembro, no Ed Sullivan Show, o programa de maior audiência mundial.
Well, yeah, because Ed Sullivan's show had this, and I should mention that TV was really helped break the mold because it was people like Ed Sullivan who would have everybody on their show. Well, prior to that, you didn't get a lot of black people on major TV shows unless they were playing a maid or janitor, that type of thing. So with TV and people like X Sullivan, Dick Clark, Don Cornelius of Soul Train, until these people started bringing up black and white performers on TV, people didn't really want us in their homes. They didn't want black people in their homes. I remember one time a lady in Florida when we were performing there said, came up to us after the show and she says, I'm so happy that you guys are here and I can bring my whole family here because I have them watching Ed Sullivan. I allow them, here's the word. She said, I allow them to watch us every day, every Sunday when the Supremes are on. Now, my brother who was in the military, he was in the war in Vietnam, right? He was with me visiting there from Miami, someplace in Miami where he was stationed. And he said, Mary, what does she mean? She invites her family to watch you guys on TV.
Sullivan lutou para que artistas negros pudessem ir ao seu programa durante a época de segregação racial. Cantores como Nat King Cole, Pearl Bailey, Louis Armstrong e, é claro, as Supremes fizeram passagem pelo Dominical.
No ano seguinte, as The Supremes emplacaram mais 3 sucessos: Back in My Arms Again, I Hear a Symphony e Stop in the Name of Love. Um clássico que permitiu o grupo a ter uma identidade através da coreografia. A inesquecível mão do Stop é repetida por milhares de artistas e apresentadores ao se tratar do grupo. Um programa televisivo destinado a ajudar contra a pobreza causou grande repercussão na sociedade, ao apresentar um grupo interracial enquanto as Supremes executavam o hit Stop in the Name of Love. A revista Time, na época, escreveu que os republicanos estavam enfurecidos com o que viram. Os anos supremos foram de muitos embates, não só para os integrantes da Motown Records, como também para os diversos cantores negros da época, vítimas do rigoroso sistema de segregação racial que assolava os Estados Unidos nos anos 60.
It was really segregated. Everything was segregated. Schools, everything. You went to church. It was separate. Anyway, so what happened was we were protected by Motown Records because their family was a very up and coming black family in the community. Their father and mother had different stores, shops. They were very well into the black community and activities and things of that nature. So they were like a family. And so when we were there, they treated us like part of their family. And that's kind of how we didn't really get into knowing what was going on in America, except for what our parents had told us, because our grandparents were slaves. So we, these stories that are handed down generation after generation, that's what we knew about segregation. We didn't realize, because in our community, everything was black. So, you went to black sort of places and you didn't really, you were not confronted by this sort of racism. However, when we went on our Motown Review tour and we went on the Dick Clark Caravan tours, we had to tour in the South. And that's when we first really saw what was going on in the world. Well, in America, not the world, but in America. And, we, in the public water fountains they have, we couldn't drink out of anyone unless it said for colored only. And back then we were not known as black people, we were colored. And then we became Negroes. And so, phrases keep changing. But so that's when we really found out about how you're treated. And first of all, it wasn't women, it was just black people, period. So I don't know if you've heard of stories where this guy, Emmett Till, was killed because he had supposedly, allegedly, looked at a white woman. And so they killed him for that. I mean, a horrible thing. And I remember seeing in one of the black magazines, Ebony, I believe it was, or Jet, where it had a picture of this on the cover of this poor guy in the water. I mean, strangled and had bricks to hold him down into the water. So that's really when I became aware of this prejudice. In terms of being a woman there, black women, it was not really prominent then because first of all, black women were not, no, women were not even considered, they couldn't even vote back then, talking the 60s. So all of these things came into it. And for us, because we were protected with Motown, we didn't have any sort of problems because they always protected us. But you can't protect against the law. If the law says you know, certain things, you will be killed, that's what happens. But fortunately in Detroit, we didn't have that type of thing because we were each in our own communities, you know what I mean? So we didn't come in contact with lots of other people.
O sucesso consecutivo do grupo, produzido pela equipe Holland Dozier Holland, tornaram as Supremas o maior grupo vocal feminino da época, batendo de frente com os Beatles, que na época era o maior grupo vocal masculino. O trio chegou a fazer aparição no filme Beach Ball.
Beach Ball. So now we did a lot of soundtracks. That was a soundtrack we did, and it was fun doing that because we were not. I don't think we acted in Beach Ball, but it was with Annette Funicello, I believe, and one of the other stars, male stars of the day, and so we were just asked to sing the song. Holland Dozier Holland wrote it, and we just sang it. But we not only did that one. Beach Ball was one. The other we did was. I can't think of the name of it, but we did it. Oh, gee, I can't think of the name of it. But we did several soundtracks. And then then later on we did, you asked me about TV as well. We did Where the Action Is with, was that Murray Decay? And one we did with, no, I think that was Dick Clark. And we did another TV thing with Murray Decay. So Murray Decay, we did two TV things. And then, of course, we did all the Hullabaloos, the Shindig, you know, those shows that are no longer on. I really miss them.
Os hits number one produzidos pela banda apresentavam Diana Ross nos vocais principais e Mary Wilson e Florence Ballard como cantoras de fundo. Apesar de Ross levar a maioria dos créditos por ser uma figura principal, Florence Ballard era uma das mais queridas por conta de sua voz e sua sinceridade nos palcos. Seu senso de humor, acompanhado de sua singular voz, tornaram-lhe a favorita dos fãs. Seus vocais eram tão altos que a cantora ficava a 17 pés de distância do estúdio, e mesmo assim a sua voz sobressaía. Uma das performances ao vivo que destaca a potência vocal de Ballard é I Hear a Symphony, no Hullabaloo, e My World is Empty Without You, no Sammy Davis Jr.
My world is empty without you, babe. My world is empty without you, babe. From this whole world, I've tried to hide my face, but from this loneliness, there's no hiding place.
No ano de 1966, o grupo passaria a ter mais dois hits número 1 nos charts, You Can't Hurry Love e You Keep Me Hanging On.
When seeing you only breaks my heart again, and there ain't nothing I can do about it. Now get out of my life.
No mesmo ano, os problemas internos do grupo começariam a assolar, após Berry Gordy definir que Diana assumiria todas as lideranças e as meninas não cantariam mais músicas.
To be real honest about it, from the very beginning that existed, from the moment that it was decided by Berry that Diane would take over all leads and that Florence and I would no longer sing lead, that problem was there. But, we sort of agreed because we wanted to have a hit record. We wanted to be stars. So whatever made us become stars, we agreed to. So we agreed to, okay, well, if you choose any one of us could sing, but it was Diane, and we were happy for that. I mean, there was no reason for us to be unhappy about that because she was one of us and she was great. We loved her voice. It just became very bad after a while when we realized, well, we're not ever going to be able to sing.
Antes da decisão, Florence e Mary tinham lideranças em músicas, entre elas People, liderado por Florence, mas com vocais isolados, divididos entre Diana e Mary, e Our Day Will Come, liderado por Mary Wilson.
Our day will come and we'll have everything. We'll share the joy falling in love can bring. No one can tell me that I'm too young to know. I love you so, and you love me. Our day will come if we just wait a while. No tears for us. Face life and wait.
Os acontecimentos do grupo fizeram com que Ballard desenvolvesse uma certa dependência ao álcool, passando a faltar ensaios do grupo e algumas sessões de estúdio. Ela foi substituída temporariamente por Marlene Barrow, do grupo musical The Andantes. As Andantes eram um grupo de apoio da própria Motown. A carreira de Florence como a Suprema teria fim no dia 1º de julho de 1967, quando a cantora apareceu bêbada em uma das apresentações do grupo. O acontecido fez com que Berry Gordy a expulsasse, substituindo-a definitivamente por Cindy Birdsong, que fazia parte do grupo The Bluebells.
Antes de Florence ser substituída oficialmente, a gravadora preparava Cindy silenciosamente para ocupar o seu lugar. Em um dos shows no Copacabana, em 1967, a gravadora havia ensaiado a fita do show com Cindy e as garotas. O ocorrido aumentou o medo e as inseguranças da jovem Florence. Florence e Cindy se conheceram anos antes, quando a garota bateu na porta do camarim da Supremes em um determinado show. Diana a recebeu no camarim, enquanto Florence e Mary tentavam entender o que acontecia. A cantora maquiou a jovem garota, que ao voltar para o camarim de seu grupo, foi recebida de forma raivosa pelas outras Bluebells.
Todos os acontecimentos com Florence, desde os conflitos com Diana Ross até os problemas com Berry Gordy e a sua expulsão no grupo, trouxeram consigo diversos problemas psicológicos. A gravadora simplesmente ignorou o legado deixado pela cantora, que teve seus direitos confiscados, entre eles a proibição de divulgar os seus próximos trabalhos com o título de ex-suprema. Com a nova integrante ao lado, o grupo foi renomeado para Diana Ross and the Supremes. De início, os fãs não notavam que Florence Ballard havia sido expulsa. Para muitos, ela e Cindy Birdsong eram a mesma pessoa. Ambas as cantoras vestiam o mesmo tamanho de roupas e calçavam o mesmo número de sapato, o que facilitou ainda mais o disfarce. Apesar da fase turbulenta que o grupo vivia entre 1965 e 1967, as cantoras permaneciam tendo hits number 1 nos charts da Billboard. Love Is Here and Are You Gone e The Happening foram os dois últimos singles de Ballard. Em algumas performances, os vocais de Florence eram dublados por Cindy Birdsong.
Now you're
No mesmo ano, Reflections era lançada pelo grupo, chegando à segunda posição nos charts. A música marca o início de uma nova era no grupo, que passou a ter vestidos modernos que prendiam os olhares dos telespectadores, fãs e admiradores. Reflections foi um dos últimos singles que o trio Holland Dozier Holland produziu. A música marcou a primeira aparição de Cindy como a Suprema na televisão. A performance foi ao ar no programa Hollywood Palace, sob a apresentação de Sammy Davis Jr., juntamente com o novo nome do grupo, que passaria a se chamar Diana Ross and the Supremes.
Took from me and left me alone with only memories through the mirror of my mind. Through these tears that I'm crying, reflex I heard I can't control. 'Cause although you go, I keep holding on to the happy time. Ooh, and you were mine. As I peer through the window of lost time, looking over my yesterday and all the love I gave all in vain. All the love that I've wasted, all the tears that I've tasted, all in vain. Through the hollow of my tears, I see a dream that's lost from the hurt that you have caused. Everywhere I turn, seems like everything I see reflects the love that used to be.
Em 1968, o grupo inovaria com o single Love Child. A faixa foi a primeira a não ser escrita pela renomada equipe Holland Dozier Holland e alcançou o número 1 na Billboard, se tornando mais uma das poderosas músicas do trio.
A música conta a história de uma garota vinda de um relacionamento fora do casamento, onde o pai a abandonou e nunca sequer se casou com a mãe. A garota nunca teve os cuidados básicos da vida, foi criada em um cortiço e começou a escola usando um vestido rasgado que alguém jogou fora. Vivendo com sentimento de culpa, a jovem rejeita dormir com seu namorado com medo de engravidar e temendo que a criança passasse pelas mesmas coisas que ela passou. O single foi performado 2 vezes na televisão, ambos no programa Ed Sullivan Show. A apresentação marcou a carreira do grupo, que pela primeira vez não foi representado com vestidos glamourosos, perucas altas e maquiagens. As Supremas estavam no palco do programa descalças, com seus cabelos naturais e trajes urbanos, exceto Diana Ross, que usava um moletom amarelo com o nome Love Child.
So what happened was, because a lot of times we always try to, whatever the song was about, we always try to sing, make it real. So when Love Child was released, it was about a child who was born out of wedlock. They were poor, all the bad things that can happen, and I know because we lived through a lot of them as teenagers. But we decided to wear our normal clothes, our own normal clothes, to make it, rather than being up there singing about glamour and up and all these things, we kind of brought ourselves down so the audience could really relate to it. And that's why we wore those outfits. And let me tell you, everybody talked about it. So it was a good move because we not only had our wigs off, our hair pieces off, but we wear our own natural hair. It was our own natural hair that we wore. So that was a sign of the times when Afro-Americans, now we're Afro-Americans.
Na gravação original, os vocais de fundo não são compartilhados por Mary e Cindy, e sim pelas Andantes, assim como outras músicas do álbum, como por exemplo I'm Living in Shame. A faixa inspirada no filme Imitation of Life, de 1959, retrata a história de uma garota que nasce na pobreza e tem vergonha de sua mãe. Quando se torna independente, a garota sai de casa e renega seu passado, começando a mentir sobre. Anos depois, ela recebe uma carta onde é anunciado o falecimento de sua mãe, e desde então, a menina vive com sentimentos de vergonha e culpa. A música se tornou uma sequência do hit Love Child. No mesmo ano foi ao ar o especial TCB, que unia dois dos maiores grupos vocais da Motown durante a época, Diana Ross and the Supremes e os Temptations. O programa musical apresentava medleys das carreiras dos grupos ao longo dos anos, além de regravações de clássicos como Mr. Robinson, cantada na voz da dupla Simon & Garfunkel, Respect, na voz da inigualável Aretha Franklin, e também o clássico brasileiro Mas Que Nada.
Mas que nada. Baixa samba, Johnny Monster. Oh, you say, oh, hey, samba.
Nesta época, Diana já planejava seguir carreira solo e todos os projetos futuros a ajudavam a ganhar mais notoriedade. No especial do TCB, Diana teve apresentações solos, além de uma parte onde era exibido um vídeo da cantora mostrando suas habilidades de dança enquanto usava um vestido de origem africana.
Well, our two specials, we had two specials on NBC. And the first one was TCB, Taking Care of Business, with the Temptations, of course. And when I say we, I meant the Temptations and Supremes. Then the second one was GIT on Broadway. And so those were two. And we were the first, I think, rock and roll or pop artist to have a television special. So this was pretty unique in 1968. It's still, everything was still very kind of segregated, even though they would change the laws and all. It takes a long time for some people to get it though. Anyway, so it was great. I think we filmed over 2 days, but we actually rehearsed for like a whole week before for both of them, individually, of course. And it was so much fun working with the Temptations because they were two members were the two members that we started singing with, the Primes, when we were the Primettes. So here we are now working along with we call them our brothers. I just spoke to Otis Williams of the Temptations, and unfortunately, he's the only one who is still alive. And that kind of hurts so much since the other guys, we were all very close to all of them. And they were like brothers. So to do the TCB and the GIT TV specials was a big thing for us. I mean, it was really, really big. And I believe they recorded, yes, it was recorded. So Universal probably will be releasing them hopefully soon. I'll remind them. Carol, you heard me say that, right?
Yeah, remind them.
But now that I'm celebrating the 60th anniversary, Universal and I, and speaking directly with Bruce Resnikoff, throwing his name around, he's the CEO. And we're talking about doing some great things for the 60th anniversary this year. So one of them is that I will be recording again, releasing material, hopefully on my birthday, March 6th this year. So we're working rather fast on this, right? And so we're doing that, and they have lots of other things Universal does, but I don't know everything that they're doing, but there will be PR out on it. And the Supremes are not the only one who has a 60th anniversary. I believe the Otis and the Temptations have. I mean, there are other people who have them too. But I pushed Universal to do ours. So, yay for Mary. Yay. Yeah.
O grupo também apareceu no seriado Tarzan, exibido pelo canal NBC, que estrelava o ator Ron Ely. As cantoras interpretaram 3 freiras e cantaram durante os episódios.
Michael row the boat ashore, hallelujah. Sister, help to trim the sail. Hallelujah. Sister, help to trim the sail. Hallelujah. Michael, row the boat ashore. Sister, help to trim the sail. Michael, row the boat ashore. Hallelujah.
Well, you know, for me, it was a dream come true again. I think Carol had asked me what would I have done had I not been a singer, but I always enjoyed watching television and the musicals and things like that. And my favorite actress was Doris Day. So I always watched her films, and she would act, and then, but yet still she'd be a normal person. And then she would sing. So I was like, oh, that sounds just like me, right? So I wore my blonde hair back in those days. And and I really, you know, felt I identified with that. So for me, it was more of just, what was the question again? TV. Okay, TV. So anyway, sorry, I've done 3 interviews already, so I'm a bit loosified here. So anyway, so when this was brought to our attention, the acting, I was thoroughly for it because I had always in my way. In fact, one of my older friends who just passed recently said, Mary, you were always acting. When we were 8 years old, you would sit up there and we would talk about things on the street and you would act it out for me. I'm like, I did? She said, yeah. So I guess I've always had that kind of ability because when I'm on stage, I am totally I'm animated. You know, it's not up to my mind what I'm doing. I'm just, okay, God, whatever it is, just let it come out. So I always did that naturally. And after that, I started, of course, Diane became a major star. I once passed, but I started taking lots of acting classes. I've been taking acting classes all these years, but I've never been able to finish because we're always on the road, 60 years on the road. And if you go to an acting class or some kind of class, it has to be a consecutive sort of learning, which I could never do. I'd always have to come home and then start all over in a class. So I never really finished it. Now, though, I'm looking for acting jobs, and I'm actually doing hopefully a documentary on the Supremes. I want to eventually do a Broadway play. So all these things are coming from me being an actress, though, I think.
O último ano de Diana como a Suprema foi em 1969. Como de costume, o grupo conseguiu alcançar mais um number one nas paradas com o single Someday We'll Be Together, marcando o fim de uma era. Em maio, Diana, ainda como Suprema, fez sua primeira aparição solo no programa The Dinah Shore Special, onde contracenou com a própria Dinah Shore e Lucille Ball. Outros programas como Hollywood Palace também deram destaque solos a Diana, que cantou ao lado de Ethel Waters e dividiu o palco com Jackson's 5. No mesmo ano, a Motown decidiu dar continuidade ao TCB. A segunda edição se chamava DIT on Broadway, onde os grupos musicais The Supremes e Temptations cantaram e atuaram. O especial foi ao ar 2 meses antes de Diana sair do grupo, e a sua última performance televisiva foi no dominical Ed Sullivan Show, onde ao todo fizeram 15 aparições.
Durante a preparação de Ross como cantora solo, outras cantoras foram testadas para assumir o seu lugar. Entre elas, Rita Wright, mais conhecida como C. Rita Wright, que chegou a gravar demos com algumas músicas do grupo. A faixa mais conhecida foi Love Child. No entanto, Berry Gordy introduziu a cantora Jean Terrell, irmã do lutador Ernie Terrell. Jean e Ernie faziam parte do grupo musical Ernie Terrell and the Heavyweights e chegaram a se apresentar também no Hollywood Palace. O último show da formação Diana, Mary e Cindy foi em 14 de janeiro de 1970, no New Frontier Hotel. Nos minutos finais, Jean Terrell foi introduzida ao público como a nova Suprema, onde pousou com o trio antes de assumir oficialmente a posição de cantora líder do grupo.
A lot of my last moments with the Supremes were always bittersweet, and I think the reason being that evening represented my whole life. up to that point, and sorry, and so it was bittersweet because I was glad that I knew that Gene was going to be able to give us another chance. I was also, it was bittersweet because it was sad that, Diane was leaving. And that part I was totally going to miss because I loved us. I wanted us to stay together, as I said before, forever. So it was bittersweet, but yet still there was a gladness, it was one of those moments where you're saying, okay, I think I made it. Now let me get through. And we did. But it was not a completely happy time for me, I'll say that.
O primeiro álbum lançado pelas cantoras foi Right On, apresentando um ensaio fotográfico em tons terrosos na capa. A música Up the Ladder to the Roof se tornou o maior destaque do álbum, junto com outras faixas como The Love Country e Everybody's Got the Right to Love, uma música que foi abraçada ao longo das décadas pela comunidade LGBT. Jean Terrell fez sua estreia no dia 15 de fevereiro de 1970, no Ed Sullivan Show, onde cantaram os medleys If My Friends Could See Me Now e Nothing Can Stop Us Now, e o clássico Up the Ladder to the Roof, que ficou na 10ª posição das paradas musicais. A performance marcou oficialmente o fim da era Royce e o início de uma nova dinâmica no grupo. As vozes de Mary Wilson e Cindy Birdsong tornaram-se mais audíveis, permitindo também que as cantoras pudessem ter linhas solos durante as músicas.
O segundo álbum das Novas Supremas saiu em outubro de 1970, intitulado New Ways, But Love Stays. O álbum, com os mais variados estilos musicais, ficou conhecido por abrigar um dos maiores singles da era Terrell, Stoned Love.
Just believe. Stone love.
A música levava uma mensagem de paz e amor como forma de cessar brigas. Inicialmente, o título original da música seria Stone Love, que significa amor de pedra em português. No entanto, um erro de prensagem fez com que a música se intitulasse Stoned Love, gerando controvérsias. Muitas pessoas achavam que a música fazia alusão a drogas, e a confusão fez com que muitas rádios deixassem de exibir a faixa, temendo o conteúdo da música. A CBS chegou a cortar uma performance ao vivo do grupo pelo mesmo motivo.
Well, for me, it was a dream come true because, after Diane left, I was really concerned if we were still going to remain on top. And I think every artist who is in that position, they would have that same sort of consideration, because I was actually the only Supreme. It was Diana Ross and the Supreme. So with Florence out there, it was just me. And I had to teach Cindy Birdsong, Everything. And so it just felt like it was just me by myself, which was really a scary feeling. But after Mr. Berry Gordy brought Jean Terrell in, and I heard her, I was like, okay, this is it. This is good. She had a great voice, and she brought a different persona than Diane. Diane's was great. I'm just saying hers was different. Jean Terrell was more R&B, more soulful. And I think that's what we kind of needed to make that big change. Had we had gotten someone who was just, pantomiming to Diane or trying to sound like Diane, that wouldn't have worked with us. We were too big, for that. So, she was more soulful. So I said, okay, God, we can do it now. So I was rehearsing with Jean Terrell and Cindy during the day, because Cindy's still fairly new, and I was working with Diane at night, me and Cindy. So I was in two groups, which is kind of weird. But anyway, I managed it, and I started taking over the business as well. Got our own managers, our own lawyers, and all those things. So it ended up being it was a good move, let's put it that way. Yeah, Virginia.
Apesar de apenas um single ter se destacado no álbum, Stoned Love conseguiu chegar na posição 7 na Billboard e é o número 1 nas paradas de R&B dos Estados Unidos. As Supremes, mesmo sem Diana Ross, permaneciam com as agendas cheias e também faziam constantes aparições em programas de televisão, entre eles o This Is Tom Jones, onde fizeram um medley de músicas compiladas, entre elas Brother Love's Traveling Salvation Show, de Neil Diamond, e também cantaram clássicos como River Deep, Mountain High, ao lado de Tom Jones. À medida que os anos passavam, a estética do grupo se modernizava, com roupas metálicas e figurinos que inspiravam outros grupos femininos.
Em 1971, após o lançamento do The Return of the Magnificent Seven, uma continuidade do álbum The Magnificent Seven em parceria com os Four Tops, era lançado o álbum Touch. Touch foi o primeiro single do grupo, onde os vocais principais eram de Mary Wilson e Jean Terrell. Cindy Birdsong cantou ao fundo, juntamente com alguns trechos finais. O álbum também teve a música Nathan Jones como a faixa principal.
First of all, let me say that, and you're right. The producer on that was Frank. Well, geez, I don't say Frank Sinatra. No, was Frank Wilson, and he had produced Eddie Kendricks. I mean, that's some great recordings with Eddie Kendricks, Four Tops. Anyway, so when I heard he was going to produce that album, those couple of albums, I was really happy. And he did bring in another element, and it was more of a. First of all, he brought in me to sing, as you said, a duet with Jean Terrell, so that was really cool. But the song he chose for me was perfect. In fact, on any of my salutations, when I write a letter or anything, I always put touch at the end. And people say, what do you mean by touch? I'm like, because that, to me, the song meant so much. Like I say, I always went for what the lyrics said and tried to sing about the lyrics. So touch was, for me, not so much a physical touch, but a mental touch. Getting to know, and so that's why I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed singing it. It was in my range because I was just starting to really sing lead again. So it was just perfect for me, and it was a perfect song. So I still, but it's amazing. I sing almost all the songs that we've recorded. I never sing touch because it was just in the microphone. It was just singing there. So I never felt like singing it to the public. Maybe I will though. I'll see.
As Supremas também foram convidadas para pausar na revista Jet, onde concederam entrevistas a respeito de sua vida pessoal e também de problemas raciais enfrentados na época. Em uma dessas entrevistas, Cindy Birdsong relatou sobre o dia em que o Dixie Coffee lhe serviu comida estragada, resultando em um envenenamento por pitomina. No ano de 1972, o interesse da Motown pelo grupo começou a diminuir. A gravadora, que estava em mudança para Los Angeles, cortou uma boa parte da promoção da banda, que passou a perder popularidade. Apesar do desapego da gravadora, as Supremas lançaram Floyd Joy, produzido por Smokey Robinson. O single, com o mesmo nome do álbum, marcou o último hit da banda, que alcançou o Top 20 da Billboard. Apesar das outras faixas, como Automatically Sunshine e Your Wonderful Sweet Sweet Love não terem tanto êxito, é necessário observar o poder deste álbum. Pela primeira vez, Mary Wilson e Jim Terrell dividiram em números vocais nas mais diversas músicas. Já Cindy tem sua voz audível nos fundos, além de narrar parte de uma música. A capa do álbum também introduz a nova Suprema Linda Lawrence, que substitui Cindy Birdsong devido à sua gravidez. Antes de fazer parte do grupo, Linda trabalhava como vocalista do cantor Stevie Wonder, como a Wonder Love. Ela se destacaria no grupo por conta de sua potente voz. Linda fez sua estreia como Suprema em 1972.
A estreia de Linda nos discos Supremos seria em novembro de 1972, quando foi lançado o álbum, produzido e arranjado por Jimmy Webb. Apesar de o álbum ter sido um fracasso nas vendas comerciais por conta da capa sem detalhes, o disco é um dos mais poderosos do grupo. Para muitos fãs, a formação Jean, Mary e Linda é uma das mais poderosas depois da formação original. Isto porque Mary e Linda faziam incríveis harmonias. O single I Guess I'll Miss the Man rendeu ao grupo performances em programas como Mike Douglas, Soul Train, além de especiais como da Kate Smith. Já no álbum, faixas como When Can Brawl Begin e Silent Voices transcendiam o que a formação poderia oferecer. Linda Lawrence não chegou a ter uma faixa solo, ao contrário de Mary, que liderou a Keep It Hid.
Oh God, that was great. Another departure. And so you see with our recordings, you can see all the different departures we made and how we evolved and sang different kinds of music with different singers. Well, Jean Terrell was still in the group. At this time, I replaced her, not her, replaced Cindy because Cindy had to leave. I think she was expecting the first child. And so we got Linda Lawrence. So it was Jean Terrell and Linda Lawrence when we recorded the Jimmy Webb album. And it was really nice because he had a totally different feeling from the Motown artists. I mean, he was like more of what was going on in the rest of the industry. So it was a different sound, different feel. He chose different music, and I loved it. And one of the songs he did with us was When Can Brown Begin? I don't know how in fact, I was thinking of maybe trying to find that and talk with him because I wanted to find out where did he come with that, because he's a white guy, he's not brown. You know what I mean? So I always wondered, because from what I understand from Holland Dozier Holland, everything they've written was from their life's experience. So I wonder where that experience came from. I would like to know. So when I get my podcast, I hope I'm going to ask him that. But anyway, the other song that I love that I didn't sing lead on, but I absolutely adore it. Yes, I did. Was that Pick Up the Pieces? No, I Keep It Hid. Oh, I love that song. So that was another. And I've been fortunate that anyone who's really written songs for me with the Supremes, they're always ballads and the type of songs I sing well. And so I Keep It Hid is one of those other songs on that album. But I love the whole album. But you know what? He and I both were very disappointed because it did not go anywhere. It did not, chart. And the one song we thought we could really count on was not Jimmy Webb's song, but it was, I Guess I'll Miss the Man. And so what happened was they released that, which wasn't even Jimmy Webb's, and it didn't do that well. So we were very disappointed because it was a good album. People should check it out, Jimmy Webb.
A nova formação faria sua estreia no Havaí, em 1972. Por motivos de saúde, Jean Terrell, que até então era cantora líder, não pôde participar do show, e a liderança foi dada para Linda Lawrence, e Cindy Birdsong retornou temporariamente para preencher o terceiro lugar. A apresentação de Linda como cantora líder foi muito bem recebida pelo público.
Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great? Take my hand and walk this land with me. And walk this golden land with me. For you are just a man when you are by my side. With the help of God, I know we can be strong. Making this land our home. If I must fight, I'll fight to make this land our home until I die.
O ano de 1973 foi tenso para o grupo, especialmente para Mary Wilson. O último projeto feito pela formação atual foi um álbum ao vivo de um show no Oriente. Devido a problemas internos, o álbum só foi lançado no Japão, sendo retirado tempos depois. O álbum consistia em clássicos das formações anteriores, como a música de abertura do TCB, gravada originalmente por Diana Ross, e também os medleys dos maiores hits dos anos 60, além de uma nova interpretação de Mary Wilson com a música Can't Take My Eyes Off You. Insatisfeitas com a ausência de atenção e promoção da gravadora, Jean Terrell e Linda Lawrence deixam o grupo. Com a saída de duas cantoras, Mary recrutou a Sherry Payne como cantora líder, conhecida por ter feito parte do grupo musical Glass House, na gravadora do trio Holland Dozier Holland.
I wear my skirts above my knees. That's all right with me. I like mine below my knee, but that don't bother me.
I like the nightlife. I seldom stay at home. I cut the grass
Já para preencher o terceiro lugar, Cindy Birdsong retorna, substituindo Linda Loris. A era Mary, Sherry e Cindy ficou conhecida por introduzir a era disco nos álbuns do grupo. Ainda sem contrato com a gravadora, as cantoras fizeram sua primeira aparição no programa Sonny e Cher, onde cantaram a música All I Want, originalmente gravada por Jean, Mary e Linda. A nova versão da música apresentava vocais compartilhados entre as três cantoras. O grupo continuou a se apresentar em programas de televisão e a fazer shows ao redor do mundo. Um dos mais conhecidos foi o Discovery Orient, gravado em 1974. Apesar de não terem lançado material musical, as garotas fizeram uma setlist baseada nos hits anteriores, como Bad Weather, Stone Love, além de clássicos como The Way We Were, This Ring e Maybe This Time.
No Brasil, as Supremas fizeram a sua primeira estreia em outubro de 1974, nas cidades de São Paulo e Rio de Janeiro. O show ganhou repercussão nos mais diversos jornais brasileiros, entre eles no jornal O Globo, onde produziram uma matéria intitulada As Vozes das Supremas na Canção e na Luta Antirracista.
Oh, it's been years. I loved it. I just wished I could have spoken Portuguese. All I know is Eu te amo. I think that means I love you in Portuguese. Eu te amo. But we were there, I think, in 75, I believe, and went to Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, and we went to a third place, which I can't recall at the time, but it was wonderful. I loved it. Everyone was so friendly, and we went sightseeing, and the audiences were so wonderful and warm, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful time. Wonderful time.
No mesmo ano, o grupo realizou um show no Magic Mountain. O show entraria para a história após Mary Wilson convidar Florence Ballard para o palco. Naquela época, Florence passava por problemas financeiros e emocionais desde a sua expulsão do grupo. A sua entrada nos palcos em 1974 fez com que a multidão enlouquecesse entre gritos e aplausos.
It was very sad. I think it was very sad. I think that for the fans it was great because I had a chance to see Florence. But for me it was very sad. And I'm sure for Florence it was very sad too. But also that evening when we were talking, Florence and I, because she was staying with me at the time in Hollywood doing this, and she expressed that it was great to be up there again, but she was through. She couldn't do it anymore. And that was very sad.
O primeiro álbum da era foi lançado em 1975, abrigando 10 faixas que transitavam entre o disco e baladas. O maior destaque do álbum se deu com a música He's My Man, onde Mary Wilson e Sherry Payne dividiram os vocais. Outras músicas como Early Morning Love e This Is Why I Believe in You também ganharam destaques e performances na televisão. No ano de 1976, o grupo lançava o álbum High Energy. Durante as gravações, Cindy Birdsong é demitida, sendo substituída pela ex-Rayleigh Suzy Green, que cantou em uma das faixas principais do álbum. High Energy foi o primeiro álbum do grupo que apresentou lideranças compartilhadas entre as três supremas. Suzy se destacou pela potência vocal, principalmente em agudos. Mas em fevereiro do mesmo ano, uma tragédia marcaria a história do grupo. A suprema fundadora, Florence Ballard, morria aos 32 anos de idade, vítima de uma parada cardíaca. O grupo, fundado por Florence, estava em seus anos finais.
Well, yeah, that was, but people put it on one thing, and it wasn't one thing that happened to Florence. It was more of what had happened to her in her childhood, which she was abused. And so this brought her to another place in life that I'm sure she didn't understand. I didn't understand it, but it just really affected her way of living. So when we became famous, I really thought that then, that would take care of everything. You think when I'm rich and famous, then I'm going to be happy. I'm going to marry this guy. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to do all the things I want to do. But your mind doesn't work like that. It works on what it sees around it and what you perceive of that. So because of this, I'll just say right out, because of this rape that happened to Florence at the age of 13, she may have been 14, it was devastating for her. So no matter how much money we made, no matter how much success we made, it was still not enough. I won't say it wasn't enough for her, but it just still didn't phase her the way it should have, the way we thought it should have. So when we started having our sort of internal problems that were more business, but I want to say it wasn't really between the three of us, because I know Diane loves Flo, I love Flo, I love Diane. I think we all have the love as sisters, but when one goes wrong, then you don't know how to help. I tried to help. I tried. In fact, we remained friends. I mean, whenever I go home to Detroit, I couldn't go there without seeing Flo. Flo was always at my house where my mom and my children were. So that was still going, but it's just that she was no longer in the group, and it was, it just tore her apart. It really did. That's kind of what happened. And then if you hear when people are in pain, they may take the drugs, they may take the alcohol, they may take a suicide, all these different things there. And Florence just kind of continued to drink more and more and more, and that was never anything good for her. And it just kind of just made have a meltdown, and that was at the point when she was asked to leave the group. Of course, I was not happy with it. I don't think Diane cared much because she was going on her own, so it wasn't she who was being affected, and that's okay. I'm just saying it didn't really affect her as much as it did me, because I'm singing with Flo. She was my guide. I mean, she was my lead. I follow her all the time with backgrounds. So yeah, it was pretty devastating for her too. I mean, if it was devastating for me, I know it was devastating for her. I mean, her whole world ended.
A primeira aparição de Suzy Green como Suprema foi no programa Soul Train, onde cantaram algumas faixas do álbum, entre elas Don't Let My Teardrops Bother You, gravado originalmente na voz de Dionne Warwick.
That you'll change your mood and maybe find there's something you're leaving behind, and maybe then you'll see where you've been blind. But if someone has managed to erase me, she's what you want, if she's what you want, if she's what you want to replace.
O show mais conhecido da era Mary, Sherry e Suzy foi no Montreux Jazz, onde Suzy foi ovacionada após interpretar profundamente a música He and Heavy He's My Brother.
I said that he ain't heavy.
O último álbum do grupo foi lançado em outubro de 1976, intitulado Mary, Sherry e Suzy, um álbum dividido entre disco e baladas. Todas as Supremas tiveram lideranças nas faixas, entre elas Come Into My Life, liderada por Suzy Green, You Are The Heart of Me, uma balada liderada por Mary Wilson, e Let Yourself Go, com Sherry Payne nos vocais principais. As The Supremes encerrariam suas atividades no dia 12 de junho de 1977, após 19 anos. Em 19 anos, 9 cantoras fizeram passagem pelo maior grupo vocal da história. Em quase 2 décadas, o trio de garotas formado em Detroit abriu um espaço para a inserção do povo negro em renomados locais, e também inspiraram inúmeras gerações de jovens e adultos. Com vestidos glamourosos e músicas envolventes, as Supremas se tornaram ícones da moda e da música. Após o fim do grupo, as cantoras continuaram trabalhando no ramo musical. Outras fizeram composições de sucesso, como Suzy Green, ao escrever a música Free para Denise Williams.
Diana Ross se tornou ícone mundial e uma das maiores cantoras do século, permitindo-lhe aparições nos mais renomados programas de televisão e eventos. Linda Lawrence continuou trabalhando com renomados cantores. A cantora participou do álbum Carnival of Spirits, do cantor brasileiro Moacir Santos. Sua faixa mais notável é Tomorrow Is Mine, gravado futuramente pela cantora brasileira Luísa Adnet.
Em 1979, Sherry Payne e Suzy Green lançaram um álbum em dueto pela Motown Records intitulado Partners. O álbum também contou com a participação do artista Ray Charles na música Love Bug.
His head, I said, love bug, give it to me. Then he started to dance and say, the little fella shaking boogie. With a wink of his eye, he sprinkled love around and disappeared, never saying bye. First he's here, he's gone, he's up and running.
Nos anos 80, Sherry Payne formou o grupo Former Ladies of The Supremes, ao lado das Supremas Jean Terrell e Cindy Birdsong, que foi substituída por Linda Lawrence. O grupo está em atividade há 35 anos, e a formação atual consiste em Sherry Payne, Suzy Green e Joyce Vincent, do grupo Tony Orlando and Down.
It's a blessing. We're blessed to wake up every day and still be here to do this.
And we are very focused in what we do. We are very deliberate, and yet we believe in the joie de vivre. You know, this is an extraordinary circumstance. Performing for a lot of people, it's a very blessed thing, and you just give it what you got. And we're so grateful that people come out and come and see us and talk to us and share with us the things that they've saved through the years or memories that they have. They're friends, from around the world.
Coincidentemente, Joyce Vincent seria a escolhida para substituir Mary Wilson nas Supremes, mas por decisões da gravadora, o grupo não daria continuidade sem a presença de um integrante original.
Cindy Burton lançou o single Dancing Room em 1986. Posteriormente, ela seguiria a carreira no mundo gospel, fazendo apresentações em programas como PTL.
Jim Terrell seguiu carreira solo, lançando singles pela A&M Records, além de fazer inúmeros shows pelos Estados Unidos. Mary Wilson lançou sua primeira autobiografia nos anos 80, intitulada Dream Girl, My Life is a Supreme. O grande sucesso a permitiu lançar mais 2 livros, um nos anos 90 intitulado Supreme Faith e Supreme Glamour, seu livro mais recente lançado em 2019.
Well, I started writing when I was 17 years old, and it was because of a teacher, Mr. Boone, my English class, knew of us being the Primettes and recording and all those things, and we had not yet become the Supremes yet. No, we were still Primettes. So, sorry. So, in my English class in the 11th grade, my teacher said, Miss Wilson, I know that you're performing with this little group called the Primettes. He said, but if you want to go out and tour with them, you're going to have to pass my class. Well, that scared the heck out of me. He was the kind of teacher that everyone has in their school. You don't want to be in his class, okay? He will fail you. So you got to work. Anyway, we went back to Motown and all that kind of stuff. And then I wrote this paper, and it was you were supposed to write a sort of paper, intern paper. And so I did, and I wrote about my life up to that point. Well, now I'm just barely 17 years old, about to graduate, I think. And because I was still in school. And so I wrote this paper about my life. And that paper ended up being the second chapter of my last book, I think, or my first book, something like that. And so when I took it back to him, I said, here it is, Mr. Boone. He says, he read it, and then he says, Ms. Wilson, he always called you by your last name, Ms. Wilson, I think this paper is, and then he paused and he said, brilliant. I'm like, oh my God, thank you. Last book, first one obviously was Dream Girl, My Life is a Supreme. Second being Supreme Faith. And so now I felt that I had written all the biographies of the Supremes. So I said, what can I do next? And then it came to me, everyone wants to know about our gowns. And so I said, why don't I do a book on glamour? And that's how this all came about, the glamour. And it's amazing because I had to do it in 1 year, write the book in 1 year. And I had my writer, Mark Vigo, who writes with me all the time. And I write with him on his books. Well, so we did this, and we did it before the virtual started, actually. He lives in Arizona, and I'm in LA. No, I'm in Vegas. I was in LA then. Anyway, so we put together this book, and I'm not good on the computer, as you can see, but I had to do all this on the computer. And I finally got it, and I did it. And we got the book out, and I got to tell you, even with the pandemic, it's still selling very, very well. I just heard from Amazon that it's doing very well, and so that's good because people can't really go out to the Barnes and Nobles and all those different kind of places because of the pandemic.
No dia 8 de fevereiro de 2021, apenas 5 dias depois da realização desta entrevista, Mary Wilson faleceu repentinamente em sua casa. A morte de Mary deixou um buraco imenso no coração dos fãs e também no ambiente supremo, já que era ela que cuidava de todas as questões envolvendo o grupo, desde projetos até entrevistas. Mary Wilson era uma pessoa doce, humilde e de coração grande. Em seus últimos meses de vida, ela esteve próxima dos fãs mais novos, que ajudaram na promoção do seu novo canal no YouTube. A senhora de cabelos volumosos e de sorriso encantador conquistou inúmeros fãs ao longo das décadas. A Suprema sempre esteve disposta a conversar com seus fãs e também a saber como eles descobriram o grupo The Supremes. Devido à sua morte, o aniversário de 60 anos do grupo perdeu a cor e o ânimo. Entretanto, Mary nos ensinou a continuar vivendo alto e intensamente, ousando a sonhar e acreditando que os sonhos sempre se tornam realidade. O legado do maior grupo vocal feminino da história está em nossas mãos.
And thank you for allowing me to dare to dream. I'm so happy to be here.
You see, dreams do come true, right?
Yes, yes.
Right. Oh, thank you so much, John. And I just say to your listeners, I wish them all well. Stay safe. Wear the mask. I have my mask here, but I couldn't put it on with my lipstick and all that stuff. Here it is right here.
Oh, so glamorous.
Yes. But when I go to the grocery store, I don't wear that. I wear just a black one. I don't want anyone to know who I am. But I thank you and my crew, Nicholas and Dale, they all say thank you for you send us a picture.
You're welcome.
Everything so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Carol, thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. I think this was great. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yes, thank you. And, tell Sue John and everyone it worked out well once I got the check together.
Yeah, we'll do. They'll be happy.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Okay. Bye.
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 O objetivo deste documentário é fazer com que as próximas gerações tenham conhecimento da importância e do impacto social de um grupo como The Supremes, que quebrou barreiras raciais nos anos 60, justamente em uma época onde os negros não eram considerados cidadãos. As pessoas deveriam, pelo menos uma vez na vida, pesquisar a importância deste grupo na nossa sociedade, principalmente em questões como inspiração e representatividade. Mary Wilson, seu legado é imortal. Algum dia estaremos juntos.
Look at me, ooh. Look at me, I am changing, trying every way I can. I'm changing, I'll be better than I am. I'm trying to find a way to understand, but I need you. I need a hand. I am changing. I'm seeing everything so clear. I'm changing. I'm gonna start right now and right here. I'm hoping to work it out, and I know I can, but I need you. I need a hand. All of my life, I've been a fool. Who said I could do it all on my own? How many good friends have I already lost? And how many dark nights have I known? I'm walking down that wrong road, and there was nothing I could find. And all those years of darkness, yes, can make a person blind. But now I can see I am changing. I'm trying every way I can. I am changing, I'm changing. And I'll be better than I am. But I need a friend to help me start all over again. Oh, that would be just fine. I know it's gonna work out this time, 'cause this time I am changing, and I'll get my life together now. Oh, I'm changing. Yes, I know how. I'm gonna start again. I'm gonna leave my past behind. I'll change my life. Oh, I'm gonna make a vow, and nothing's gonna stop me now.